Now, part of the politics that's being played today is a desperate attempt from the Labor Party that have no path to winning the next election to try to say all of this is federal government responsibility. In fact, you may have seen this floating around on social media. It was shared, among others, by the National President of the Labor Party, Wayne Swan. This is a government built on complacency and incompetence. What a monumental failure. They only had two things to do, the rollout and quarantine. Now, despite the fact that, yes, as I've pointed out to you, quarantine ended up as a state responsibility and it was up to states to decide whether it was successful, largely, like New South Wales, where they've had the best part of 200,000 people come through, but they didn't end up with 800 deaths. Victoria, its hotel quarantine system, well, because the police union told the police they didn't want to guard it, it ended up with security guards. Then they pretended that there was nothing to see here when it came to a lack of support from the ADF. But who cares, right? Those are just the facts. Each way Albo is desperate. And he sees this is the opportunity to say the same thing over and over again every day. And it might work, because message discipline is rewarded in Australian politics, regardless of the fallacy of which you are saying. Here is Each Way Albo on the wave he thinks will carry him to the lodge.
Scott Morrison had two jobs this year. They were the effective rollout of the vaccine and national quarantine. And we've failed on both.
Now, there is always another brick in the wall that is placed in the narrative that is trying to be established by Anthony Albanese and the anti-government haters, who don't just hate the government, remember they hate you too, the quiet Australian. And one of the things that helped with their argument today was this graph. A graph that was pushed around by many Labor people, but it made a huge impact in the media today, which showed Australia was allegedly bottom of the world, last, when it came to a COVID-19 vaccine rollout. Now, I'm not going to pretend that Australia has as many doses as places like the US, Israel, or anything like that. I'm not going to say that at all. But this is about everyone who has had 2 doses, and it doesn't really matter about the size of population. But also, here's the fun bit. The piece of technology that was used to produce that graph is a thing called Our World in Data. It's a tool which is used by lots of news services, or you yourself can put together any graph to tell any story. And quite effectively, someone decided to put together a story that showed Australia was dead last in the world. Think about it. We are worse than the third world. We are nowhere near the first world, apparently, when it comes to vaccine rollout. Except there's a little problem. That's not the truth. You see, when you put that graph together, you can decide what countries count and what countries don't count. And did you know that there are 66 countries in the world that have administered fewer than 2 million doses of the vaccine to people in their country? Now, that might be enough to cover their country if it's a small dot on the map, or it could be a huge problem in places in the third world where their populations are in many, many millions more than we have here. So I used the exact same technology to show you the full picture. Countries of similar status as Australia. Now, are we anywhere near the top in terms of vaccine rollout? No, not going to pretend that's the case. But are we dead last? No. Countries like Malaysia, Greece, Sweden, Switzerland, Singapore, South Africa, Hong Kong and Lithuania, as well as those 66 other countries that I've talked about, and you could probably add another 20 or 30 countries in and around the same range that we are. Tells a slightly different story than the one that was being pushed in the media narratives today. So can I hypothesise why Australians have not flocked to get the vaccine? Relax, it's not about to be an advertorial for the vaccine. Here's the truth, the reality on the ground. One of the reasons why Australians have not gone running for this vaccine is that COVID has not wrecked Australia the way that it has other parts of the world. Put simply, let me show you again, same technology, same graphs, comparing the countries that are at the front of the queue that was presented today when it comes to vaccination and Australia right now. And the overall number of cases right now, the very top line that you can see on your screen there is the United States, where they have got the best part of millions of cases, as does India, which is the next one, the United Kingdom, which is the next one, Japan, which is that blue line in the middle, South Korea, and Australia, which has basically been at the same spot through the entire pandemic. We had, of course, the majority of our cases in and around that little blip that took place last year in Victoria, but generally speaking, we have remained pretty steady compared to the rest of the world. So put simply, one of the reasons people aren't getting the vaccine is they don't know anyone who's had COVID. Because the international borders have been closed, we don't think COVID really exists here. And we've worked out a system to keep it out of our country. And the only way that it gets into our country is if there is the human error that leaks out of the different controls in and around hotel quarantine, which is, of course, so obsessively run by the states. Again, let's use graphs. Let's use exactly the same computer program that produced Australia is dead last in the world when it comes to vaccine rollout. It's the number of people who have died from coronavirus. India is almost up there with the United States and the best part of, 400,000 people who have died. Then the United Kingdom, then Japan, then South Korea. But have a look at the number of deaths that Australia has had. We had that giant spike towards the back end of last year where 900 people died, mostly in Victoria, mostly in nursing homes, and mostly as a result, in fact 99%, as a result of the failures of hotel quarantine. Yet deaths, flat. Which is why people won't get the vaccine, apart from any other reasons. Of course, the Prime Minister has now made a decision that if you want to go see your doctor, you can get the AstraZeneca vaccine to help push us up those global rankings.
Does that mean that people under 40 will be able to talk to their GPs and get the jab immediately?
Well, if they wish to go and speak to their doctor and have access to the AstraZeneca vaccine, they can do so.
Any age group?
So the answer is yes, they can go and do that.
But of course, for a lot of different reasons, including, yes, contradictory, endlessly changing information that we get about who should get AstraZeneca, what the very low but still potential risks are with AstraZeneca. When you actually talk to a doctor on the ground, even the people who have booked for an AstraZeneca shot, they're not turning up to have it. Put simply, millions of Australians don't want AstraZeneca for whatever reason, and that's fine, because it is your choice about what you get. But a doctor on the ground, well, he tells the real story that the graphs don't tell.
It's too late right now. The horse has already bolted. People pass their judgment on the AstraZeneca. They're voted by their feet for not coming into the surgery.
Apparently, just a couple of people who were booked in to get their shot actually turned up. So if the problem seems to be that not enough Australians are putting their hand up, it's because, for whatever reason, they don't want AstraZeneca. Again, the same doctor on the front line.
No one is coming below 60. No one is coming, younger than 40. Right now, and late June, they will definitely not interested. They pass their judgment.
So things are always a little more complicated than they seem. The truth is that Australians don't want AstraZeneca. Australians don't feel the urgency to go and get a COVID vaccine because we don't know people who've had the virus. Even fewer people know somebody who has died from the virus. Australians, well, we're a pretty happy-go-lucky people who have largely been able to live the best part of 2020 and 2021 without real COVID cases. And the only reason 15 million people are locked down right now is because of an infinitesimal number of cases, but a particular fear about the potential of the Delta Force strain. So the solution to this, and I'm sure somebody else will repeat it and it'll become bigger news when they repeat it, but let me tell it to you first. At some point, Australia is going to have to do something with the AstraZeneca supply that we have. I suggest that we donate it. We donate it to other parts of the world that are willing to take it. And if it means that we have to wait that little bit longer for enough Pfizer to be produced, for Johnson & Johnson to start and make its way through the system, for Moderna to make its way through the system, then guess what? Australia, the population, has made a decision. And that is that they want to wait. Which means hotel quarantine will continue, which means there will be leaks, and it means that there will be plenty of politics between now and then. But what do they say about liars, liars, and damn statisticians? Beware of those who want to tell you that Australia is dead last at anything. Because I would prefer to be dead last on that list that was put forward by the left today than to be at the front of the pack of cases or the number of people who have died. But call me crazy.